It was past 2 a.m., and Lena stood alone in the dim kitchen light, tightly holding a glass of water while gently touching her belly in silence.
The house was completely quiet, but the silence didn't feel peaceful, as if unspoken emotions had built up inside the walls themselves. The low sound of the television came from the living room, but no one was really watching it. It was just noise filling the emptiness.
Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch, and the exhaustion on his face seemed to carry the weight of the entire day.
Lena looked at him and wanted to wake him up, but then changed her mind because lately even talking had become exhausting.
There was once a warmer feeling inside this house, something more alive, more intimate, and more real between them.
The day they found out about the pregnancy, Daniel couldn't hold back his tears, and Lena believed their lives were about to change forever. During the first weeks, everyone cared about Lena. Messages kept coming, and people constantly asked how she was feeling. But as time passed, that attention slowly disappeared, and only one question remained.
How's the baby? Because no one asked how Lena was anymore.
This started creating a strange emptiness inside Lena, because she felt invisible.
Every morning before leaving for work, Daniel would leave a short kiss on her forehead, but those kisses no longer felt the same.
The little gestures that once felt full of love now seemed more like habits.
Lena noticed it, but she didn't know how to explain it because what she felt didn't really have a clear name.
Some nights, after Daniel fell asleep, Lena stayed awake for hours staring at the ceiling.
She got lost in her thoughts, trying to understand why she felt so alone.
She picked up her phone and started browsing pregnancy forums because she wondered if other women felt the same way. Many women were writing similar things. I feel invisible, or no one sees me anymore. As Lena read those comments, for the first time she saw her own feelings reflected in someone else's words.
And in that moment, she realized it wasn't all just in her head.
But even then, explaining it to Daniel wasn't easy, because from the outside, everything looked completely normal.
One day at the grocery store, people only looked at Lena's belly and barely noticed her face.
For the first time, Lena felt like she was no longer seen as a person, but only as a pregnant woman.
When she got home, Daniel was sitting in front of the television and didn't even ask how her day had been.
Lena quietly sat beside him, but the distance between them could still be felt, even on the same couch. Dinner conversations had turned into short exchanges followed by long silences.
One evening, Lena gathered the courage and quietly said, "Sometimes I feel lonely." Daniel looked surprised because in his eyes, everything was normal, and he immediately replied, "But I'm here."
But for Lena, the issue wasn't physical presence, it was about truly feeling seen.
And that night, Lena realized for the first time how far apart two people could feel while living under the same roof.
Lena had started feeling exhausted even when getting out of bed in the mornings, because it was no longer just her body that felt heavy, but her mind as well.
Daniel went to work, came home in the evening, and from the outside their life looked completely normal. But for Lena, the days had started blending into one another, and that feeling of repetition only made her lonelier.
The silence in the house no longer felt peaceful. It felt like an invisible distance growing between them.
One day, after returning from the grocery store, Lena paused for a few seconds at the apartment entrance because even going inside felt exhausting.
No one noticed, but deep inside, Lena was starting to fall apart. Sometimes she just wanted someone to truly notice her.
Not just ask, "How's the baby?" but "Are you okay?" But people no longer saw Lena. They only saw motherhood. One evening, Lena quietly watched Daniel laughing on the phone with his friends. Realizing he hadn't spoken to her that comfortably in a long time hurt her deeply.
At that moment, Lena truly felt invisible for the first time. She began waking up more often during the night because her mind never seemed to go silent anymore.
The glow of her phone lit up her face in the dark room as she spent hours reading forums.
The more she read stories about other women's loneliness, the more she began to understand her own silence.
One woman had written, "My husband is beside me, but I still feel completely alone." Lena read that sentence over and over because it described exactly how she felt. When morning came, she once again acted as if nothing was wrong.
Daniel didn't notice because Lena had learned how to suffer quietly.
One day in the bathroom mirror,
she saw the exhaustion in her eyes more clearly than ever before.
The eyes that once looked lively now seemed emptier and more distant. At that moment, Lena realized she had changed not only physically, but emotionally too. At dinner, the conversations had become even shorter.
They sat at the same table, yet felt miles apart from each other.
One night, Lena cried silently, but Daniel didn't even hear her.
Because sometimes people can stop seeing each other's pain, even while living in the same house. Lena had grown tired of trying to explain herself. She kept most of her feelings buried inside because she was afraid of not being understood.
And with every passing day, that silence widened the distance between them a little more.
Lena was finally beginning to understand that some relationships do not break all at once, but slowly and quietly. One night, Lena could no longer hold it in, and while sitting alone in the kitchen, she quietly began to cry.
When Daniel came into the kitchen for a glass of water, he saw Lena's tears and, for the first time, truly stopped.
"Are you okay?" he asked. But this time his voice sounded different. He genuinely wanted an answer.
Lena couldn't speak for a long moment, because everything she had been holding inside was tangled in her throat. Finally, she said just one sentence, "I feel invisible now."
Daniel looked at her in shock because he had never realized how lonely Lena truly felt.
But I've always been here, Daniel said, almost as if he were trying to defend himself.
But Lena slowly shook her head, because the issue was never physical presence.
You were beside me, but you weren't really with me, Lena said, and the silence in the room suddenly felt heavier.
For the first time, Daniel truly fell silent, because he was finally beginning to understand what Lena had been feeling.
That night, neither of them spoke much, but this silence no longer felt empty like before.
As Daniel lay in bed, he began thinking about the past few months and realized how distant he had become without even noticing.
Between work, exhaustion, and routine, he had never realized how emotionally alone Lena had felt.
The next morning, before leaving for work, Daniel sat beside Lena for the first time without rushing. He put his phone aside, and for the first time in a long while, truly listened only to her.
As Lena spoke, Daniel didn't interrupt, because this time he was trying to understand rather than fix everything.
And sometimes what a person needs most is not advice, but to truly be heard.
In the following days, Daniel started changing the little things.
In the evenings, he turned off the television and genuinely asked Lena how her day had been.
They started going on walks together, and for the first time in a long while, they had real conversations again.
Lena didn't heal immediately, because emotional wounds take time to form and time to heal.
But after a long time, she finally began to feel truly seen again.
Daniel was no longer trying to notice only the baby, but Lena as well.
And Lena could feel how even those small changes were creating a huge difference inside her. One evening, Daniel quietly said, "I didn't realize I was neglecting you."
Lena's eyes filled with tears, because for the first time in a long while, she truly felt understood.
That night, the house was quiet again, but this time the silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful.
Some silences separate people, while others bring them closer again.
Lena finally realized something. A person does not need to be abandoned to feel lost. Being unseen is enough.
And Daniel finally understood that loving someone is not always just about being beside them, but about truly seeing them.